Now, I did hear that Chris Jericho was on a show and he said that Hulk Hogan is and was a better worker than Ric Flair. Now, all these marks are trying to say Chris Jericho is out of his mind. I'm like, how? What he said was a literal fact. Hulk Hogan is a better worker than Ric Flair. He was a better worker than Ric Flair. Do people know what the word worker is in pro wrestling? Okay. I love the details that Chris Jericho gave, right? He didn't just talk out of his ass. He actually gave details on why he was a better worker than Ric Flair. Listen, why do people ignore the fact that Hulk Hogan was the biggest draw in wrestling of all time, even though he was balding? Let me say that once again. He was balding. When people talk about Hulk Hogan, they never say he's bald. They never say he's balding. Nobody used that against him because he is a great worker. He worked you. He worked me. He was so good on the mic. He was so great on TV. We didn't care he was bald. That's a sign of a great worker. He worked you. He worked you so good, you didn't care about his bald spot, right? He worked you so good, you didn't care that he wasn't great in the ring. People are mixing up what a worker is. He was so great at working you, he was not that great in the ring, but he still drew tons of money by not being great in the ring. That means he's a great worker. He knew how to work his character. Character development. This guy was balding. He was not great in the ring, but he was still the highest selling merchandise mover. He was main eventing WrestleManias as a below average guy in the ring, and he was balding. Okay, do people realize how big that is? The fact that he was so great as an overall character, we didn't care he was balding. Okay, would you care if Roman Reigns had the Hogan look? Would he be as big as he is today? What if Roman Reigns was balding exactly like Hulk Hogan? Would he be as a big a deal or a draw today? No. Would we take Roman Reigns seriously if he was balding? No, we would not. That would be too big to pass up. That would be too big to ignore. Imagine the tribal chief as a bald guy, balding like Hogan. Would you take him seriously? No, you would not. That's how great Hogan was as a character, as a talker. He could talk you into a building based on his overall look and presentation, based on his overall character. That's a sign of a great worker. Ric Flair was never the draw of a Hogan, so how is this a slap in the face of Ric Flair? Listen, Ric Flair, I'm sorry, he might go down as one of the most overhyped guys. I was never a huge fan of Ric Flair. Yeah, I liked his character. Great talker. But can you say he evolved his character? See, we need to have that discussion about Ric Flair, right? Has he ever evolved his character? Dude, this dude has been the same guy since the 1980s, right? We are always hard on guys for not evolving their characters. Ric Flair has never evolved his character. He's been the same guy since the 1980s. You cannot say that about Hulk Hogan. Literally, you can't say that about Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan has evolved multiple times because he's a great worker. If Ric Flair was such a great worker, how come Bret Hart does not respect him as an in-ring performer? Dude, even Bret Hart said that, Ric Flair was a boring guy. Ric Flair had the same match over and over and over again. He goes on a turnbuckle. He fakes like he's going to jump off the damn turnbuckle, and then his opponent has to grab him and press him off the top rope. Same match, right? Over and over and over again. So that's one of the main reasons why he was never a huge draw. It's the same thing over and over again. He never evolved. Sting evolved. Lex Luger evolved. Ric Flair never evolved. It's like, how come we are never hard on Ric Flair? It's like, I don't know why people say bad things about Hulk Hogan in terms of his in-ring style. I'm like, dog, I loved watching Hogan. And when it came to Ric Flair, even during the 1990s, I was never a huge fan of it. I was like, bruh, what is the big deal about Ric Flair? I don't get it. I just don't get it. But with Hulk Hogan, it's like, man, he was a great worker. It's like, how can you deny it? Dude, when was the last time people made fun of Hulk Hogan's ball spot? If Roman Reigns had a ball spot, we would never hear the end of it. But Hogan was so serious as a character, it's like, man, we respect him so much. Where it's like, man, we ignored it. Dude, Vince McMahon ignored this man's ball spot. Vince McMahon ignored the fact that Hogan was not a great in-ring performer, but to me, I think he was. I think Hogan was a great in-ring performer. It's like, listen, if you want to learn how to be a great face, watch Hogan. Watch his matches if you want to know how to be a great face. All his matches worked. He made you realize, you know what? He's not that great in the ring, but we don't care. It's like his matches always worked. He always hid his flaws. That's what made Hulk Hogan great. He was great at hiding his flaws in the ring. Not so much Ric Flair, like we knew Ric Flair's limitations. But let's talk about when Ric Flair was the WWF World Champion. What was he drawing? Did you care about his feuds? No. I will say, dude, his most memorable run was when he was going against Macho Man Randy Savage. But overall, it's like Ric Flair did not have a great run compared to Hulk Hogan. So, bro, you can't say Ric Flair's better. Like, how? How the hell is Ric Flair better than Hulk Hogan? It's not close. Vince McMahon gave Ric Flair a strong push. Did the fans care? No. It's like Ric Flair was out of his element. Ric Flair, he should have never left WCW and the NWA. I feel like that was his company. To me, he felt out of place in his WWF run. He was never Hulk Hogan. It's like, man, how can you even argue this? I thought this was a well-known fact. Hulk Hogan is the greatest worker of all time. He's way better than Ric Flair. It's like, what? It's like, you people need to stop overhyping Ric Flair, man. Good Lord, you don't know what a worker is? It's like, when I was a kid, I didn't care. I didn't notice that Hogan was bald. I didn't care that Hogan was not a great in-ring performer like a Shawn Michaels. We didn't care, bro. I didn't care. We did not care. Let me say this. He drew tons of money versus Bill Goldberg. Remember that? That was the highest rated segment in wrestling history during that time. When Goldberg beat Hogan, that drew tons of viewers that night. I think that match actually beat Raw because people wanted to see Goldberg and Hogan. Hogan was mega over as a heel. You know what I'm saying? Because he evolved. He went from Hulk Hogan to Hollywood Hogan. You can't say that about Ric Flair. He's the same guy. He's the same Buddy Rogers ripoff. Like, I don't get it. It's like, do you remember Hogan versus Andre the Giant? That drew, what, damn near 25 million viewers? Just like, dude, like, he drew tons of viewers with Andre the Giant, and he drew tons of viewers versus Bill Goldberg. It's like he was a money-making draw because he was a great worker. He worked you. That's what a great worker is. People think a great worker is a guy like, I don't know, like a freaking Ricochet. No, that's not a worker. A worker is like a guy like a Hulk Hogan. He works you. That's what Chris Jericho means. He worked you into the building. It's like, yeah, you might think Hogan was not great in the ring, but guess what, bitch? You still paid to see him. You still paid to watch him at WrestleMania because he worked you. That is a great worker. It's like, man, y'all gotta stop overhyping Ric Flair, man. I was never a fan of his matches, ever. It's like, we need to stop this. Ric Flair was not a better worker, not a better in-ring performer. He was never a bigger draw, obviously. So by your logic, who was drawing more money? The WWF or the NWA? Right? Come on, man. Who was drawing more money? WCW or the WWF? When Ric Flair was the top guy. Who? You know what I'm saying? Stop saying dumb shit. I speak common sense. Common sense says Ric Flair was never on the level of a Hulk Hogan. Okay, I'm done.